Okay, we're going to show you how to run silicone out of an Ultracal mold. I'm going to use this Makeup Effects Pro release. It's a wax release in a solvent. I have a small bottle I keep around for occasions just like this. These molds are what's called disc molds. My friend Peter made these molds, and they are for a Santa Claus cheek. So these molds originally are designed for old school running in foam latex, but you can use Ultracal to run silicone if you prepare the molds properly. So the molds are cleaned. What Peter did is he put a layer of, brushed in a layer of concrete sealer to really seal these molds good. You can see a little bit of the shine from the concrete sealer in it. And if you don't have concrete sealer, don't worry about it. This wax release will soak into the mold if you do it many times and really create a waxy finish. That's what you need, is that waxy finish. So when you spray a mold release and then layers of Baldy's spray on here, it will peel out and give you an encapsulated piece. So we're going to prep these molds. I've checked them, make sure there's nothing on there. They're good and clean. So we're going to prep these molds, and you can see how we do it. If your brush is stiff from using it, it will soften up very quickly. I just liberally brush in the wax mold release. Make sure you get in all the edges, especially around those blending edges. If you see anything in the mold that's released, make sure you get it out of there. And I simply just brush the release in until the liquid evaporates and you get a nice dry waxy finish. If these are new molds, you can do this while they're still warm, or you can warm them up in your oven, you know, to maybe 100 degrees, whatever. Just warm them up, it'll help this stuff soak in. So I'm going to really brush these things down. I get everywhere. Get the keys, get everything. And as it evaporates, you can brush away the excess, and eventually you'll get a nice flat finish like you see on this one. All the shine will disappear. When in doubt, put on another layer. So I'm kind of getting that on there now. I put a little bit more in the middle here. Just want to make sure that these molds have a waxy finish. It's a good idea to go all the way around the perimeter too, just so you have a nice waxy finish on the outside, in case when you're spraying your Baldies, you spray along the edges and you want to be able to clean that off. So, okay, so these are done. Now I'm going to get the positives. This has a drilled hole in it. I'm going to put my brush down in there. You can use a Q-tip if you like. Just make sure you get wax down inside that area. Get in all the cracks, get your keys. Make sure your keys are cleaned out. You know, sometimes when you run these many times, you get a little bit of Baldy's plastic in areas that stays, and you need to get that out. So just make sure that you brush this stuff in really good, and you'll see if it's in there a good enough coating, because it'll have a flat finish to it. It won't be shiny. Brush it in, use it liberally, don't skimp on it. Make sure you get a nice waxy finish. I would do this every time you run these pieces, especially since they're Ultracal. If this was an epoxy mold, you don't have to do it every time, but Ultracal, I always do it this way. Now the next thing I'm going to do is put a spray release on the surface of this, because I want my Baldies, as I spray it on with an airbrush, to land on top of that slick finish of a mold release. Now the mold release is already sitting on a wax finish, so the mold release is actually going to ensure that that Baldies coated prosthetic, encapsulated silicone prosthetic, is easy to pull out. It's like Teflon. Think of it as like you're spraying this with like a liquid Teflon. Think of it that way, and you're going to take an egg out of the pan. You just want that thing to come out really easy. So a good release, a good all-purpose release that I like to use is Ease Release 200. You can also use an epoxy parafilm release. There's a lot of releases that leave a nice finish. There's another epoxy parafilm extra 4, there's an extra 3. They're all good. This is what I choose to use because it gives me a nice finish. Now, I want you to see how they look now. Once I spray this, it's going to leave a nice, slick, shiny finish on it. Short bursts. Don't just big spray. This stuff leaves a nasty smell. And that's the mold release. As you see, it's got that nice, reflective, shiny finish. And this is what you will spray your Baldies on. Okay, next we're going to spray our Baldies coating on before we run our silicone. I'm using regular Baldies. It's the acetone based version. I like it because it dries faster and it actually, to me, is easier to release from the mold. So what I have is a little bottle of acetone here to clear my brush, and then this is the mix, the pre-mix of Baldies. I'll add a little bit to this jar to top it off. It's important, if you're not going to be spraying Baldies for a while, to empty out all your containers and clean them out, because Baldies, the acetone will evaporate and you'll find gunk down in the bottom of there if you don't do that. So I'm in the middle of running silicone for a couple of days, so I just put these as they are. Usually I'll put them in a Ziploc bag to seal in any air so they can't evaporate. So I'm using a Pache brush, a 5 needle point. I keep a paper towel around so I can see if I'm getting a good spray there. So I'm going to spray each one of these to get a nice layer. Some people have asked me, do you have to worry about your keys? If you are worried about getting a thin layer on your keys, you can put a little piece of tape or a little dab of clay on there like this, and then using a Q-tip with acetone on it, you can go around it and then take it off. If you take it off without doing that, you're liable to peel up some of your plastic, so don't do it. I don't really bother with that. To me, it's such an ultra thin layer that may get on there. I've never had a problem with thick edges because of it. I just avoid spraying on the key area. So here is, I'll hold this up so you can see. What I do is I spray around this area first, because that's where my blending edge and that's where my flash edging is. So then I'll spray the middle. You notice I'm using short bursts. That keeps the room from filling up with acetone fumes. So I'll go around that. I'm using about 35 to 40 pounds of pressure. Make sure I get it sprayed on there. If you get spider webbing, you just have too much plastic. You need to thin it out. So I just tilt this, get my positives, tip them up so you can spray straight onto them. Avoiding the keys. I avoid where the keys are. It's a little harder to see on Ultracal, but if you're using a gray repro mold or a type of epoxy mold, usually it's a color or a gray mold, you can actually see a foggy white layer of the Baldies. It's hard to see on Ultracal. Did you know that you can tint Ultracal a flesh tone if you put some food coloring into the water when you mix it? It works. Or any kind of water-based paint pigment. So that's one layer. I'm going to go back. I'm doing about 3 or 4 layers. I want a good thick. Now to test the layer, you can always take a pen You can spray an area, and you can take a pin and pick it up, and if you got a nice thin layer of plastic, that tells you you've got enough on there. I've done this enough, I kind of have a feel for it. But if you're a first timer on this, do that to test your thickness. You don't have to have a super thick area. You just want to have good area, a good thickness around your blending area so it holds your flashing along with your appliance so you can glue it down and melt it off. This is probably plenty on that. You can do a lot of this. Wear masks so it helps your breathing, so you're not sucking up all these fumes. I usually hold my breath a lot while I'm doing stuff like this. Go. A couple nice layers on there. If you can always mark with a pencil where your edge of your appliance is so you know where your blending edge is. Just for good measure. And that should do it. Now we'll run our silicone. Okay, we've got my silicone. I've mixed it up. I put it in my vacuum chamber. Got all the air bubbles out. Now I'm just blowing in a little extra air to get rid of any surface bubbles that may have come up. What I do is I drizzle it around the edges first, making sure I get some in this area for my flashing. And then I let it settle to the middle. So just a little like that. Do this so any surface bubbles can kind of work their way out as I'm pouring the second one. Cheek molds like this are really easy to work with because you can just let them fall to the middle of the cheeks. If there's any surface bubbles, you can kind of take them off with a spatula like I'm doing here. There's an area there you can smush over. You don't want to touch the surface because of your baldies. You don't want to disturb the baldies. If you have any questions on air bubbles, blast them out. Get them out of there. Now I got a little silicone left. I'd rather have more in there than I need, so I'm just going to dump a little right there. Let it fall down to the middle, making sure I get around all my edges. So I'm going to have some flashing. That's the important thing, making sure that you have flashing to grab onto in your final piece. Great. Okay. Make sure your alignment is good. Line it up, give it a push. My vent hole works good. Double check this again. Line that up again there, let it settle, press it out. I like these clamps, and as you see I've got them setting up on a piece of wood, that way I can get my clamp under it. I just kind of hand tighten these easily. I'll come back in a minute and tighten them tighter. That way I just get an even pressure. On bigger molds, you might want to do 3 clamps. But these are small. I could probably do this with 1 clamp is all I'd need really, but this just ensures I get a nice tight, straight down pressure to press those 2 molds together and cut a nice blending edge. Unlike foam latex, you don't want to cut your blending edge off. You want to keep that flash edge around it so you can help position your piece. There we go. All set. I keep my container around. If you want, you can always pour a little out, but you can always check it through your vent area here. So I usually leave these for about 45 minutes to an hour just to make sure they're good and set, because it is a cold day. The silicone is fairly cold and the molds are cold. If it was a warmer day, this stuff would set faster. That's the quick procedure on running silicone encapsulated pieces in an Ultracal mold. Okay, it looks like our pieces are set and we can take them apart. I do the clamps. Like I said, I usually let these sit for about an hour. Here's the trick. You peel the rubber away, then you work out your piece here. I usually take a scissor, I'll stretch it out as far as I can and snip it. Then I take my air gun and I'll blow a little air in here. You can always crank up the air for some higher pressure if you need. I turn that up to about 60. It's being a little difficult. That fails. So simply take your screwdriver, give it a little bit of a squeeze. That pops the suction. And the trick is, let's give it a little bit more. Let's open this up. Go in there, just kind of break loose. There we go. There we go. Nice piece. So let's powder that so it doesn't stick to itself. I should have stretched this out a little more before I cut it, and I would have gotten air down in there. Cut this as flush as we can. There we go. What I do, I trim this off. Sometimes I'll dab a little bit of boldies on there. Great, there's my piece. Very nice. Let's open this one. Okay, we'll loosen this up again. I'm going to stretch this out as far as we can. Loosen that up inside there. Now we take our air, give this a blast, see what we can do with it. There we go. That was good. Now that just releases the suction. You got to peel back this loose stuff. Break that loose and get rid of it. Even use your, you see how easy it opens when you use that air. You can get a little tool or little tips of your scissors. There we go. Okay. Trim this little guy off here. A little powder. As you see, it didn't really matter. I didn't get much on the keys, and it certainly didn't make any difference as far as how tight this thing closed. There we go. Always powder your pieces. There we go. Santa Claus cheeks all ready to go.